Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Roll-Up. I'm Kagan Dunlap, and every day, Monday through Friday, in the evenings, we post a roll-up of 5 to 7 small news stories that took place, in the recent days that we cover, and we mash it all together to do a roll-up. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So Taiwan's been in the spotlight recently because there was some pretty big military exercises taking place in Taipei somewhere between July 13th and 14th of 2025 as part of Taiwan's annual Han Kuang military exercises, specifically during Han Kuang 41 drills in July. Now, the Taiwanese military police conducted a novel training scenario out there involving the transportation of munitions using Taipei's mass transit system, which would give them a good opportunity to practice transporting weapons in a public transportation system if the entire island was under attack, which could be a quick way for them to get around the island if they needed to disperse and dispense weapons and logistics to different positions and stuff like that. So the exercise, which took place on the 5th and 6th days of the live fire phase of the exercise, focused on simulating the redeployment of troops and supplies in an urban environment amid a hypothetical Chinese invasion. It marked the first time that Stinger missiles were transported via the mass rapid transit system during such drills, which I think they were doing this because they wanted to show the emphasis on utilizing civilian infrastructure in order to conduct defensive maneuver. Because if Taiwan gets invaded by China, the civilian environment and the military environment are going to blend together pretty significantly, because they're at a point now where it's like, if you attack Taiwan, it's very similar to the way that the Japanese viewed America, where Emperor Hirohito said behind every blade of grass there would be a rifle, right? It's like kind of the same thing out there in Taiwan, because the entire population, for the most part, is ready to defend to the last man, pretty much, based on what I've seen. In any case, the drills involved approximately 100 soldiers from the Military Police Command and the Army's 3rd Logistics Command. They were coordinated with the Taipei city government in order to ensure minimal disruption to public services. And obviously, if you're going to be transporting military grade weapons on top of like the mass rapid transit system, the government probably needs to know that. Needs to be some communication, some back and forth, so that way they could be like, hey, let's keep civilians away from this area during this time while we're conducting training. The training occurred early in the morning, sometime around 1 a.m. apparently, while the mass rapid transit was closed to passengers between the Shandao Temple Station and Longshan Temple Station on the Bannan line. Troops boarded at the Shandao Temple, conducting tactical movements inside the train cars, and then exited at Longshan Temple before continuing exercises in the streets of the Wanhua district. Now, soldiers carried a various load of munitions and weapons, including US-made FIM-92 Stinger missiles, which is a shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile system that's pretty lightweight and portable, with 8 missiles per pods, or per 2 pods. They also transported machine guns, 40mm grenade launchers, anti-armor rockets, and other notable weapon systems. The Stingers were acquired through US military aid and were emphasized for their mobility and role in low-altitude air defense, allowing quick deployment against aerial threats in combat zones, which, again, Taiwan's like whole prep time and all of their rehearsals and all of their military training pretty much at this point revolves around defending the island against a notional Chinese invasion, because that's the biggest threat right now. So obviously something that's man-portable, it can be easily transported around the island by a person rather than needing to be transported by large vehicle, is going to be super valuable if it comes down to it, just because it'll allow them to maneuver through the city and target aerial vehicles if such an invasion actually occurs. Now, footage of the drills depicted soldiers in full tactical gear. You see everybody's wearing, full battle route. They're wearing their kit. They get magazine pouches, flax, Kevlars. Most of them are wearing balaclavas to conceal their face, probably because they knew they were going to be filming and they don't want their face out there so that people can't see who they are. And to show the soldiers boarding empty mass rapid transit trains, standing in formation inside the cars, exiting platforms rapidly, navigating station gates and escalators with the weapon systems, and assuming defensive positions. Some of the scenes showed the troops taking a knee, like holding security and things like that as well. well, because if they're practicing military operations in urban terrain, they have to practice security measures and security precautions that would need to be taken while you're maneuvering through complex man-made environments like that. You're gonna be facing like a lot of challenges because you're facing basically a three-dimensional environment if you're navigating, you know, a city while transporting weapons, especially if it's under invasion, you know, because then you've got subsurface stuff, you've got surface stuff, and then you've got buildings above you. You have to cover down on security for like everything, which is a lot. And that's extremely stressful, which I don't know how much of a subterranean system the Ukrainians have set up, but there's definitely a massive subterranean system set up in Taiwan, especially due to the fact that they have this big mass rapid transit system set up. Now, again, the primary goal of all these rehearsals and drills was for the military to utilize the mass rapid transit system as a protected covert transportation network for rapid troop movement and resource redeployment during an invasion scenario where surface routes might be compromised by bombardments or enemy surveillance or drones, which would 100% be used if such an invasion occurred. Now, Taiwan's mass rapid transit system, with its extensive underground sections, which is about 93 miles of track and 135 stations, provides hardening against missile strikes and aerial detection, which would enable the military to kind of move around without being monitored or without being able to be observed by an enemy force if they were under invasion. Which, given the fact that drones would be heavily used and like relied upon during something like this, especially being that we've seen how often China uses drones for military training exercises and stuff like that, being able to maneuver undetected underground without being visible to the air would be a huge advantage. But again, that's all if the mass rapid transit system still had power and if the rails hadn't like had their tunnels collapse on it and stuff. I don't know how deep down these tunnels are. You know, that's something I'm sure that they took into consideration when practicing these drills. Now, this aligns with their broader defense strategies with like an emphasis on training in an urban environment, because if Taiwan is invaded, most of the fighting is gonna happen in the cities. I mean, it's a small island. There's not a whole lot of like open terrain out there. So most of the fighting is probably gonna be like to hold cities and hold urban terrain. It's also part of their defense strategy of asymmetric tactics like concealment and deception to counter a superior force, which the Taiwanese understand and consider China to be a superior force. There's a lot of folks out there, and probably in the US military, that believe that the subway could double as command posts or field hospitals, though like I said, you know, power outages and things like that would pose a significant challenge because, you know, what are you going to do for electricity if the grid's down completely? Now, this one exercise that took place in the mass rapid transit system is just one part of the longest live fire phase in Hong Kong's history, which has included beach defenses, runway repairs, and deployments of systems like HIMARS and Patriot missiles, because there's some speculation and some folks that believe that there is going to be a possible Chinese assault on the island as early as 2027, though there's no confirmation necessarily. So the best thing they can do is just be as prepared as possible. Some of the security measures in place for these drills where they had some security station guards to kind of like keep people out, and then the drills had limited public involvement due to the off hours testing, because like I said, or they were doing these drills at like 1 o'clock in the morning, which most people were probably asleep at that point. This definitely underscores like the main focus and some of the main concerns that the Taiwanese military believes they're going to face if an invasion happens, which is urban warfare, and like the military is going to be mixed in with civilian infrastructure. And if they come under attack, the cities are going to be some of the biggest, you know, points of contention for the People's Liberation Army as they assault across the Taiwan Strait. So anyway, I thought this one was interesting. So it looks like the Ukrainians are making more deep strikes within Russia. Apparently the city of Voronezh, which is about 500 kilometers south of Moscow, was hit by a one-way drone on July 15th of 2025. Russian authorities apparently said that the air defense systems downed multiple drones over Voronezh, but some of the debris from the intercepted drones caused damage and injuries in the residential areas, and also looks like some drones got through. According to some of the local officials out there, including the Voronezh governor, they said that about 16 people were injured, including one teenager. Most injuries were described as cuts, shrapnel wounds, and minor trauma, with 13 individuals hospitalized. One man was reported to be in a coma and others in critical condition. Now, Russia's defense Defense Ministry claimed to have destroyed 55 Ukrainian drones overnight across multiple regions, including Voronezh, Lipetsk, Belgorod, Kursk, and Rostov, and over the Black Sea. In Voronezh specifically, they said that they downed at least 12 drones, though take those numbers with a grain of salt. The city of Kherson in Ukraine, which lies right on the Dnipro River, came under a shelling attack from Russian forces on July 14th of 2025, and when that happened, it resulted in a fire that engulfed a two-story non-residential building that firefighters from Ukraine's state emergency services responded to. Now, while the firefighters were putting out the fire, they came under drone attack from the Russian forces, which was targeting the firefighters directly. And there was video footage that captured the moment when the drone approached and nearly struck the firefighters, who managed to scatter and take cover just in time to avoid any injuries or casualties. You'll notice that the firefighters are wearing flaks, like they're wearing plate carriers because they have to, because the inherent level of danger that's out there in Ukraine, even as a first responder, because this fits into the broader Russian military strategy and military tactics in Kherson specifically, which has been under intense pressure since it was re-liberated from Ukrainian forces in late 2022. Now, the Russian troops in the region are positioned just across the Dnipro River, and they frequently employ drones, as you've seen across the entire landscape, to not only target military assets, but also civilians, infrastructure, and first responders in what some people over there have been referring to as deliberate terror operations. These strikes are oftentimes referred to as double tap because they'll conduct a strike and then they'll conduct a follow-on strike against first responders when they respond to the first strike. And it's been a recurring strategy all over the region just to incite fear and terror among the civilian population and also the first responders and everybody else. So that's why the first responders are dressed the way that they are, because this has been a recurring theme. An example of this is on July 6th, Russian drones targeted a fire truck responding to a gas station blaze in Kherson. And then similar attacks have happened against ambulances and also medics as well. On July 14th, the Ukrainian Air Force executed a precision strike in the Zaporizhia region where a MiG-29 fighter jet dropped GBU-39 guided bombs on a Russian drone command post that was located in a tree line. The operation involved this aircraft right here, which was very low flying in order to evade Russian air defense systems, particularly in areas with potential low visibility conditions or limited range threats. Upon reaching the target area, the MiG-29 pilot engaged its afterburners, which rapidly gained altitude, and then it released the bombs in a maneuver to maximize accuracy while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Now, the GBU-39, which is also known as the Small Diameter Bomb, or SBD, is a compact American-made precision-guided munition that weighs approximately 130 kilograms with a diameter of about 190 millimeters and a length of roughly 1.8 meters. It features fold-out wings that extend its range up to 110 kilometers when released from high altitude, and also a tungsten tip for penetrating reinforced structures like concrete shelters, and also a guidance system that combines inertial navigation with GPS for high accuracy. The bomb also allows for selectable detonation modes such as air burst or delayed explosion post-impact. Now, Ukrainian MiG-29s were adapted last year in order to integrate these weapon systems because the aircrafts were originally designed for Soviet-style weapons, which weren't compatible with Western-supplied weapons. So they upgraded them last year so that they could start using Western-supplied weapons, because obviously they're not going to be importing weapons from Russia to attack Russians. Now, footage of the strike was shared by Ukrainian sources, including Telegram channel Airfighter, which is the video that you're seeing up here, and reposted by tons of other channels all over X and things like that. And it provides a first-person perspective of the MiG-29 cockpit as the attack was going on. And obviously, as you can see, the outcome of the attack was the successful destruction of the Russian drone command post, though specific details on casualties and things like that remain a little bit gray. So I'm sure by now you've probably seen the news about the southern city in Syria called Suea, or you've probably heard something about it. So this southern city is on the border of Jordan and also near the Golan Heights, and is inhabited primarily by this community of people called the Druze, which is an ethno-religious minority with roots in the religion dating back centuries, and they have strong connections with Israel. It's also been a hotspot for anti-government sentiment even under the former Assad regime due to the economic neglect, corruption, and also lack of government services there. Now, there were some protests that started happening in Suea back in 2023, demanding political change and also better living conditions, especially after the fall of Bashar al-Assad in 2024. And this kind of led us up to relatively today. Starting in July 13th, there were clashes that erupted in Suea city between local Druze fighters, including militias like the Men of Dignity movement, and then armed Sunni Bedouin tribal groups. And then some of the initial reports coming out of there saying that the fighting began over a tribal dispute, possibly involving a kidnapping or resource competition or something like that. And it quickly spread to heavy weaponry, including machine guns and mortars and all kinds of stuff like that. By the end of the day of the 13th, 30 people were reported killed and numerous homes and infrastructure was damaged. By July 14th, the violence intensified with reports of sectarian undertones as Bedouin fighters advanced into Druze neighborhoods. And so the Syrian government had to respond to this, and they sent, under the Ministry of Defense, they sent a bunch of fighters affiliated with the HTS-led administration, and they deployed to the city in order to restore order and peace. However, this intervention led to more clashes, including attacks on security personnel, and casualties sharply rose initially. I think there was over 50, 60 deaths reported, including civilians. And then Israel started conducting airstrikes in support of the Druze because they've historically maintained stronger connections with the Druze. When Israel's conducting these airstrikes, they were conducting them on Syrian regime convoys and tanks that were moving towards Suea, meaning the Syrian government forces sent from the Ministry of Defense of Syria. And then as of July 15th, the Syrian defense minister announced that there was a complete ceasefire, apparently, with negotiations with the Druze community leaders and notables. And then government forces began withdrawing heavy military equipment from the city and handing control of the neighborhoods back to the internal security forces of the Ministry of the Interior. Now, despite the ceasefire, there's still been some clashes, sporadic places throughout the area, with reports of lootings and executions and verbal assaults on Druze civilians by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham affiliated militants that were there. One thing's for sure is that anything involving the Druze or Syria is so complicated because there are so many different organizations and entities that are involved in these things. It's sometimes really hard to understand. And there's a lot of tribal stuff that goes on out there. The government has very limited control over a lot of the troop movements in the area still. They're still working on getting organized. So this is certainly one of the darkest stories I've heard in a long time. There was a very bizarre thing that took place in Victorville, California on July 13th of 2025 when police found a teddy bear that appeared to be wrapped or covered in human skin was discovered at a bus stop outside of a gas station. Law enforcement reported to the area, and the San Bernardino County Coroner's Office investigated whether or not it was actually human remains. And initial reports described the bear as macabre, potentially fashioned from human flesh, sparking widespread media attention and public speculation online, including concerns of foul play. Now, after examination, the coroner investigators confirmed that the teddy bear did not contain any human tissue, so it was not skin. It was actually made from latex designed to mimic skin, so this was like a horror-themed prank, essentially. And the item was actually created by a South Carolina-based artist named Robert Kelly, who specializes in horror-themed props and practical effects. Now, the guy Kelly claimed that the placement of the bear was intended as a prank or promotional stunt, though authorities briefly detained a man connected to the incident before determining that no crime had actually occurred. Now, strangely enough, apparently there's actually human skin teddy bears that are sold on platforms like Etsy for around $100 to $200, and it's marketed as a creepy decor or gag item, each one being a unique latex design. Now, while the Victorville Discovery went viral on social media and it was determined that it was actually not skin, it was still very unsettling to everybody involved. So if you have friends up in New York City, now might be a good time to check on them. On July 15th of 2025, there was extremely heavy rainfall from a powerful storm system that absolutely smashed New York City specifically, which led to widespread flash flooding that inundated several of the subway stations out there and disrupted public transportation across the tri-state area. Some of the flooding was particularly severe at the 28th Street station and the number 1 line, where videos showing water gushing downstairs like a waterfall waterfall and like a geyser coming up from below, trapping passengers on platforms and also inside trains. There are similar issues that happen near 96th Street, leading to suspensions on the 1 and 2 and 3 lines across Manhattan. And there's also flooding going on in Queens over at the 23rd Street station and other places like that. So I've seen people joking about it, saying it's washing off New York, but I would still check on your friends up there, see how they're doing. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. I know it's oftentimes daunting to stick around for a video all the way until the end of it, so it means a lot that you guys support the channel. It helps support me, helps me enable me to continue to do this kind of stuff and support my ability to pay these editors to make these videos engaging, interesting, and easily digestible. I appreciate you guys watching. We are going to continue to try to refine these things and try to get better and improve them, so that way we can continue to improve the quality and the content and the context. If you have time, leave a comment. Let us know something that you thought we did well, something that you appreciated about this. You know, if there's something that you think we should improve upon, let us know that as well, because we do read them and we want to make them better for you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.